folks. Uh, and then maybe mute if you want to hit your mute button just in case. But we are going to have audience questions here. So welcome to the live version of the Civic Pulse. Excited to see a group of our folks who watch this show up live to hear from a couple of our experts on Ukraine that David and I know from our travels to Ukraine, that are two wonderful people. I'll quick introductions here. Kevin Leach is the founder and director of Sabre Training Advisory Group, a Canadian-Ukrainian not-for-profit, which brings NATO veterans to train Ukrainian forces where they are needed most. He is a 10-year veteran of the Canadian Armed Forces and served as an OSCE ceasefire observer in Ukraine from 2018. Boy, it'd be nice to have a ceasefire again. I'd like this 2018 with until the full-scale invasion of 22 in February 22. Adnan Rana, Audi, is a former U.S. Marine officer with drone industry professional who has been volunteering in Ukraine since spring 2022. He is the president of a U.S.-based nonprofit providing critical commercially available equipment for Ukrainian defenders, and he currently works with Ukrainian companies developing strategic technologies in artificial intelligence and unmanned systems. Thank you, Kevin and Audie, for being here. First question I get to ask, and then I'm going to pass it to David to ask the questions. But I want David to also answer this in light of the Israeli attack on Iran yesterday. The world is interconnected. We're going to really focus on Ukraine in this conversation, but sort of a two-part question. Give us your overview. I'll start with Audie first here. Your overview of the state of the war, and does this attack in Iran impact it in any way? So just we'll dive into a lot of sub areas, but just sort of broad brush. Where is the overall state of the war right now? And Audie, I'll kick it off with you first.
Hey, nice to meet everyone that I haven't had the chance to meet before. Um, yeah, I mean, it's kind of a huge question, right? Like, where's the state of the war? Um, you know, Currently, like the funding and aid situation looks a bit desperate. We just saw, Pete Hegseth saying that the U.S. is probably going to pull all funding for Ukraine next year. But the Ukrainians are, I don't want to speak on their behalf, but they're adaptive and resilient, and those are kind of two themes that we've seen uh, present themselves over and over during this war. Um, you know, we're currently seeing kind of the Kevin might have more information on this, but the beginnings of a Russian summer offensive in the Sumy region, which according to the Ukrainians is being defended against and appropriately withheld, but we'll see what the reality is on the ground, probably as more information comes out of there. As far as the Iran tie-in, I mean, for those of us in Ukraine that have been living under Shahed attacks for the last, 3 years. Um, yeah, we feel the interconnectedness there. Um, is that the strategic objective of the Israelis to take out, Iranian Shahed productions to help Ukraine? I don't think so. But if it helps to alleviate any pressure on Ukraine, then we're happy for it. But I think most of that production has been shifted to Russia anyway. Um, for me, as kind of somebody who's thinking about stuff on the technological side of things more, it's very interesting to see the way that the Israeli special operations and intelligence pulled off um, this operation inside Iran. There's a lot of it that looks very similar to the Ukrainian SBU operation against the Russian strategic airfields. Um, so it's interesting to kind of examine it through that lens. But I won't rant much longer. I'll turn my time over.
We'll come back to that because it would be fun to do a deep dive on that. Kevin?
Right on. So I deal more on the soldier side, especially as regards infantry, and things are uh, there's no way to sugarcoat it. Things are in a really tight spot right now. We've been losing territory for quite a while, and Now we're looking likely to lose a couple of major logistical hubs in Pokrovsk and Konstantinivka. I remember when those weren't frontline cities. That's the bad news. There's been some missteps on the Ukrainian side. The good news is that Ukraine is moving to the core system. They're taking successful units like Azov and Third Assault and elevating them to positions of leadership above other brigades that are also successful, but they're kind of concentrating their assets on a strategic level, which is the right move. This is something that my organization has been concerned with, is like military training reform. And so seeing that, I'm talking to the connections that I have, mostly in Third Assault Brigade, not Brigade, Third Assault Corps now. They are it's other foreigners who have come to Ukraine and to help with training, and they are very optimistic about the direction things are moving in. So it's while things are quite tight now, I think that we are seeing slowly for now, but I think it will pick up speed. We're seeing the kind of reforms in training to move, to establish a Ukrainian standard, to move away from the legacy Soviet systems, which had really caused so many problems. And that'll be, once that's happening, once it has a little more momentum behind it, I firmly believe that we're going to see some pretty dramatic moves on the ground. But it's touch and go, and I don't want to. I don't want to make any firm predictions because things out here change rapidly. There's to just get in a little bit on the Israeli side, like it's great to see one leg of the Axis stool kind of being kicked out. But one of the downstream sort of second order effects of this is probably going to be a spike in oil prices, which is going to mean more money in Russia's pockets. It's not great, but Russia's not running out of money anytime soon. A lot of giddy predictions that have been coming since 2022 that Russia's about to collapse, Russia's economy is going to fail. I can tell you, I'm not in Kyiv right now. I'm just visiting some family in Canada, but from the perspective of someone living in Kyiv and someone that frequently visits the fighting areas, it doesn't feel like Russia's about to collapse. So I don't believe in that strategy of victory. I believe that through application of maneuver warfare, Ukraine is going to defeat Russia, but that requires ongoing support. And yeah, it was not good. It was not good news to read the other day, that statement from Pete Hegseth. And it's even strange to see that there's disagreement between him and his the chief of the, oh my God, Joint Chiefs or whatever. Anyhow,
Yeah, Chairman
sorry,
of Joint Chiefs. Yeah,
I'm not nearly as familiar with the American government as frankly most Canadians are, but there's encouraging but also discouraging signs. Our hope, at least in Ukraine, is that we're going to see increased aid from Europe as American aid decreases, and then aside from that, though, and this is something that's very germane to our organization because we are 100% donor funded. The levels of, I would say, private support coming from American citizens, I think, have increased. I think that as a reaction to a less willing government, now the people of the United States are kind of stepping up, and that's completely in line with what I understand of American history, is that it's a nation driven by its people rather than by the government. So it's a bit of a no. I don't have any big statements to make. It's just there's good signs, there's bad signs, but overall I'm optimistic. A lot of the people in my line of work are optimistic. So we're just going to see how things unfold, and we have to just keep all of us have to keep doing what we can to support Ukrainian victory.
David, the global politics of today, where do you see it all standing post this Israeli strike and with the state of the Ukraine war?
Well, I can't speak to the Israeli strike yesterday, but because I really don't know specifically what day. I know it took a lot of their leadership, the Iranian military leadership, but that was interesting. It also, but I probably would agree with Audie. I'm not quite sure that we're going to keep those Shahed drones that they've been supplying the Russians. I don't think that we're going to stop that. They find a way. They'll find a way to get there. But in terms of this war, it's ground to almost a war of attrition. Although on the ground, I think Kevin is right. They're making incremental gains, and we have lost a couple of key, or on the verge of losing a couple of key places that he talked about. But in the end, though, if you look over a period of time, they've only gained about, like, from what I've been reading, 1% of in the last year and a half, and that's not enough to do it for the Russians. And I'm more on the optimistic side, because I think the Ukrainians they're defending, number one. They're defending their own land, and there's an advantage to that in terms of psychological advantage. Number two, their technology attributes are amazing. I think we saw that 2 weeks ago with the strikes deep into Russia, thousands of miles into Russia, and getting rid of a third of their major fleet of bombers. That was quite an accomplishment. But there are other things on the horizon, I think, that we don't know about, and nor should we know about. Let's assume that I can't imagine that the Ukrainians are not working on some more robotic pieces that are going to make a huge difference. Now, will they make a difference this year or maybe even next year? I don't know, but all I do know is that if you look at the number of arms, the trajectory of self-sufficiency and producing your own arms, the Ukrainians have made a substantial gain from about 20% to something like 50%, and it's continuing to grow. And they have just a very significant technical capacity to make things happen. Now, one of the things that I've noticed from the broader question that Brian raised, world strategic piece, what Trump has done by divorcing himself, not completely, but considerably from Ukraine, is he's brought the European world together. And they're increasing their defense outlays. And the NATO people are doing this, all of the NATO countries are doing the same thing. And I expect there'll be more European dollars flowing into Ukraine for this war, for the vehicles they need and the armaments they need, and other pieces of the war. So that's good. I was really kind of interested in this whole Japanese satellite question that I haven't heard or read very much about in the press. I look for it, I don't see it. The Japanese have invented this thing called SAR. It's a satellite system that it runs on microwave, so it can penetrate smoke and fog and everything else that causes invisibility. And it's the latest thing, and they've given it to the Ukrainians. Basically, they've offered Ukraine to use it, and I'm sure they're going to use it. So that was a huge question, maybe 2 weeks ago, because of the we were worried about whether Trump was going to provide any armaments to them at all. We were worried about whether Musk was going to shut off the signal. So, but now they've got this Japanese piece, which is huge and significant, which I'm very optimistic about. And then,
David, oh,
yeah,
sorry. I'd love to have Audie piggyback on your tech thing,
Yeah.
just because that's his sweet spot, and just see where he what he knows from being on the ground in Kyiv, and can actually say, because I'm sure there's some things you probably can't say on Zoom. But is it on either the Japanese tech side, or what are the tech things you're seeing that show some hope or not hope, Audie?
Yeah. I know a little bit about the satellite. I know it's reassuring, but I also don't know about like the level of like continuous coverage the satellites can provide, because like relative to what Maxar can provide, which was one of the streams that was like briefly shut off when the US had, temporarily stopped sharing intelligence with Ukraine. Um, that provides like an immense amount of coverage and access. And to my understanding, and this is not like my area of expertise, it's very hard to replicate the level of access and coverage that Maxar can provide. But again, like you got to make do. Like if you think one avenue is going to be closed off, you have to find another one. Um, as far as just like tech generally, I think that what makes me optimistic is the level of like Ukrainian domestic production and the development of their own like SOPs and TTPs for employing that. So, I'm here in the US at the moment, and
SOP, TTP, no idea what
oh,
that.
sorry. Like standard operating procedures and tactics, techniques and
Yeah.
procedures, just like the employment of these
Okay.
things. Um, so yeah, I'm here in the US at the moment, and was just having a conversation with somebody, and they're like, "Oh, like you know, those because these attacks on the Russian strategic aviation bases, that was all over the news, and some people had this impression that it was like Western provided equipment that was responsible for conducting these attacks, like long range drones or something. It's like no, 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 no. Like this is a like Ukrainian thing, like their own drones made by Ukrainians inside the country, employed, using like new concepts like this idea of like smuggling in basically like drone manufacturing facilities and like establishing like forward operating bases inside like hostile territory, and then using those as like launch pads more or less, is kind of like a brand new thing. And we hadn't seen anyone else do it, as far as I know, up until the yesterday when Israel hit Iran. So, anyway, to kind of pull back, the thing that it makes me optimistic is aid is required. Um, we need, like air defense, right? Like anti-ballistic missile defense, anti-drone defense, like all that stuff is critical, and Ukraine does rely heavily on Western support for it. But they are not like helplessly waiting around for US aid. They are developing like their own things. And I mean, there's organizations like Brave One, which is kind of like the defense tech hub by the Ukrainian government. And you can go and you can look at some of these companies, and like they're coming up with things that are just like incredible capabilities, um, manufactured for much cheaper than the U.S. military industrial complex would manufacture them. So there's things to be hopeful about, and the Ukrainians are quite smart. So
Audie, let me ask you a question on that line of thought that you just given us. Uh, I was on a train from Lviv to Kyiv about 15 months ago, and it's a long ride. It's about 5-6 hour ride, and at a compartment, Father Daly was with me, and this woman came by, and she said that I heard there was a congressman here, And, you know, I says, no, there's no congressman. That was a former congressman. So anyway, we got talking and we were chatting away for a while and, you know, just generally about life in the war and how it is for people. And when we got to the train station, we got off the train and she said, would you like a ride to your hotel? My husband's going to come pick me up and we'll give you a ride to your hotel. And it was raining. So I said, oh, sure, why not? It's raining. I'll take a ride. So I got in a car with him and big guy. He was in his fatigues. He was a general in the Ukrainian army. And so he said, I was waiting for our luggage to come to the car. He said, I want to show you something. So he takes out his iPhone. He says, I was just at a dedication this afternoon, ribbon cutting sort of thing, where we dedicated this robot. And he puts it out, he shows it to me. And it's about the size, it's like a little mini tank. It's about the size of somebody who would ride a John Deere lawnmower in your backyard, you know, and easily maneuverable, easy to put away. And, you know, but you could, he showed me that you know, where the guns were on it and how they operate. It's all done by remote. So the point I'm getting to is I can't imagine they're not working on this kind of stuff because of the manpower issue versus the Russians. And it made a lot of sense to me. And I'm wondering if you've heard that they're using it. And number one, and number two, is that the future? It seems to me it's the future. It seems to me a lot of the stuff that they're going to display in Washington, D.C., with Trump's going to display tomorrow, is not going to be as significant as it once was. So, question.
Yeah, David, you know, it's a good point. So on one hand, I'll preface this because I know Kevin would get upset if I didn't. Um, Unmanned systems are not ready to replace the infantry. And human capital, like well-trained NCOs, well-trained specialists, well-trained riflemen, are absolutely critical in this fight, right? Like part of the job of the infantry is to seize and hold ground and repel an enemy counterattack. And uh, unmanned systems, whether they're robots like ground systems or air systems, they're not there yet. But they are absolutely able to help offset the ratios of personnel able to be deployed by Ukraine and by Russia. So like the thing that like you saw, you know, they are being used. I mean, there was like I think it was last fall or last winter, like in the Kharkiv direction, like there was an entire like combined arms like assault conducted just by unmanned systems with like, you know,
Robotics.
robots with guns on them and, you know, drones flying and all that stuff, everything working together in tandem. But you can do that, and that's great. It definitely has an impact, and both sides of this war are highly technologized. But at the end of the day, you still need a human to go in and clear out whatever that objective is, go into that trench, check for people, and then hold it and defend against the enemy counterattack.
Let's let Kevin get in, and I can see you itching to weigh in on this one, Kevin.
Yes, so it's one of the things that I learned this when I was in the Army, and I learned it was really driven home in my, I guess, wartime experience, if you can call it that. And it's that really the infantry, that's, I mean, the soldier on the ground with the rifle, that is the military. Absolutely everything else only exists to enable that infantryman to do his job. So it, you know, close with and destroy the enemy, take and hold territory. And that doesn't mean you have a you know, force on force press like we see with the attritional warfare. You can have infantry fighting more like more in the style of Brazilian jiu-jitsu by, you know, using positioning to choke off the enemy. That's the point of maneuver warfare. Technology is an incredibly important component. We have to, one of the activities that we're doing now, it's a little bit on the back burner until I have a few more resources in hand. but we're building these SOPs, the standard operating procedures and the tactics, techniques, and procedures. We are sort of codifying, according to the lessons learned here in Ukraine, how to integrate small drones with the infantry and how to coordinate between those two, so that we can have, because there's a big problem with coordination. You'd be a soldier, you know, you're a soldier on the ground, you're in your trench, and you hear a drone approaching. You know, without proper coordination, either you are going to, you know, freak out and have to take cover when it's just a friendly drone, or perhaps you're going to accidentally shoot down a friendly drone, or you know, just going on, well, it's coming from behind me, so maybe it's ours, and then unfortunately misapprehend that, and then be successfully struck by an enemy drone. And so coming up with the, like, basically we're getting over the not the sticker shock, but the new tech shock of drones on a small scale. And we are going, okay, so they deliver these capabilities. We understand these capabilities. We need to bring in the proper procedures and techniques in order to fully exploit those capabilities. And so it's a very long way of saying that these are very valuable weapons, robotic systems, or I should say unmanned systems, but they don't, you know, early on you had a lot of people saying, you know, tanks are obsolete. That's absolutely not true. What we're going to see is kind of more, especially with like AI getting as good as it is, you're going to have something like a pod that you attach to an armored vehicle that's AI driven, that identifies these incoming threats like small drones, and just shoots them down. A lot of the technology necessary for that already exists. It's just a matter of putting it together and really getting it into the hands of firms and governments that are resourced to develop this sort of thing. So we're modifying the role of manned forces, absolutely. But what it's going to look like, if you ask me, the more that this technology progresses, if anyone's ever read the book Starship Troopers, not the movie, but the book, you basically have incredibly highly trained infantry that are in multi-million-dollar suits of armor that provide them all kinds of capabilities that are, you know, beyond the dreams of 21st century infantry. Technology is going to allow us to come closer to that ideal, but at the core of it, you must have trained and armed personnel that are able to analyze the situation on the ground and apply their thinking quickly there on the ground. There's it's something that we strive to bring into training, is like ground level decision making by NCOs and junior officers. Because if you have, say you do have a completely remote controlled force, first of all, you're losing all kinds of senses on the battlefield. Like it's something that I compare it to like people playing video games versus doing something in real life. In video games, you have this very constrained view. You don't have your peripheral vision. You don't have your sense of smell. You don't have your really accurate sense of hearing. All of those things they matter on a small scale, but you aggregate them and they have massive battlefield effects. And so without having troops on the ground, you lose all of that. That all robotic assault was not very decisive. They're trying something out. They're seeing, you know, how does this work? It wasn't meant to be some war-winning move, but it showed that these technologies, while they're phenomenal, and while they do a very good job of enabling the on the ground forces to fight, they are absolutely no replacement for the infantry. And so that's something that I bang on about that all the time, because primarily
Kevin,
what we do is infantry training. Yep.
Can I hit you on that, both of you? What don't we know sitting? I mean, let's be honest, the Ukrainian news has fallen out of the public sphere here. What don't we, you really have to dig for it now. What don't we know about Ukrainian morale, recruitment of soldiers? What is it that we're not getting in the media right now that you guys are knowing, Kiev, that's kind of obvious to you but hidden to us?
How honest do you want me to be? Because some it's not all It's not
Let's
all
be honest,
sunshine and rainbows.
these are veteran.
It's up here too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's the good news is there's like healthy recruiting for units that have a good reputation. I mentioned Azov, Third Assault, Rubij, Kartia. They do well on bringing in volunteers. The I don't know, it's mixed news is that there's been lots and lots of problems with conscription. There's been lots of corruption involved around conscription, and this is something that kind of steamed me up. I saw someone. It was a crowd of 100 people surrounded one of the they call them bussification, which is just guys that don't fight. They don't fight, but they got their little uniform on and they go and they turn up and they grab somebody and or multiple people and throw them in the back of a van. And a crowd of 100 people stopped them from doing this. And I saw people online who it's very easy for them to hold this opinion, saying that these are Russian agents and traitors and all this stuff. And the fact is, I'm very sympathetic to young Ukrainian men who don't want to roll the dice of being put into a random unit in the Ukrainian military, because you could, if you're lucky, you end up in a unit that has the qualities of Azov or Third Assault. If you're unlucky, you wind up in somewhere under a Soviet trained colonel who has a 600% casualty rate and sees nothing wrong with that. So that's the bad news. But what I'm being told by my friends who are a little more highly placed is that the government's goal now is to concentrate more on attracting volunteers and to rely less on conscription. And so there, again, it's like so many things out here. We are running into the problems, or the Ukrainians are running into these problems, and then quickly figuring out, okay, what's the solution to that? And the all this bad stuff, in my opinion, all this bad stuff is more than matched by the progress that's being made. And I will reference something that I said earlier on, that it's a very good sign that they're taking successful units and moving the successful units and successful commanders up to higher levels of influence, because they will attract. There are a lot of young men that are still signing up, even under the conscription age, and the government made a really smart decision when they announced the big bonuses for 18 to 24-year-olds to sign up voluntarily. But they constrained which units would be allowed to take these younger recruits, and it's not spoken about publicly, I'll say, but it is a tacit admission that Ukrainian leadership recognizes the weaknesses within their own system and are acting to ameliorate those. So it is, it's definitely it's a hard time for us. I think we're in a rough period, but it's getting better.
Audie, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, Kevin kind of hit on the macro level trends. I could speak just a little bit about and this ties into the training aspect as well. Some of these specialists that you need to support everything, right? Whether it's like an infantry assault or some type of special operations thing or air defense. Um, that's a lot of training that goes into building like electronic warfare specialist or like a communication specialist, air defenders, or just trained, experienced NCOs that have the knowledge and the foundation to, lead operations. And it's one of those things where, I think Kevin would agree with this too. Well, I know he would agree with, the training, the importance of training, but you know, Western partners could help alleviate some of this. Like we could set up, you know, academies inside Ukraine. We could set up more training schools. Because a lot of these guys, I think they gain a lot of experience on the job and because they're needed at the job immediately. But we really need to like set them up for success by making sure that they have the proper training on the back end or on the front end.
If
There was
I
a piece in the Washington Post today, just real quick comment, and I'll yield back to you, Kevin. there was a piece in Washington Post today saying the reason that the Russians have been able to make some ground away from Donetsk and into Dnipro-Eska, is that how you pronounce it? The oblast next to Donetsk there. Anyway, they're making some headway. And the reason they suggested it today in the Post was that they're operating in smaller units and they're using the maneuvers that you train, basically, and that's been successful for them. So it'll be interesting to see if we'll see more of that. Yeah, Kevin.
I just know on the topic of where Audie left off, and then I do want to reference what you just brought up. But so I'm in Ottawa right now, and the big reason for me being here is to build support for in-country training, because the NATO training efforts are good. They're especially good at getting these basic skills for the soldiers. The issue is that there's a lot of time burnt transporting the soldiers outside of Ukraine and then back in, and it is also very expensive. And then there's tons of constraints on the training that can be done on NATO bases. For example, some NATO bases you're not allowed to dig, so you can't make trenches. Other NATO bases, you're only allowed to fly drones at certain heights in certain areas of the base, so you can't realistically simulate the combat conditions. There are no such limits like that here inside of Ukraine. And with organizations like ours, there's immense talent. Like our advisory team has, like our advisory and training design team has an active duty lieutenant colonel. We're courting a retired major general. We have serious talent. And then we have our in-country instructors. Some of them have been fighting. Others are just very, highly qualified veterans. And so you can have, in fact, with a lot more bang for your buck, you can have these training capabilities inside Ukraine, where we are sharing that knowledge and experience from the Western perspective, but also collecting lessons learned in Ukraine and providing that back that will save Western lives in the case of a wider conflict. But as for the Russians making that, so they're penetrating into Dnipropetrovsk region. We'll see how it develops. I can't comment on their tactics. I'd have to go out and talk with some friends and get some updates. But the way I feel is they've been doing what so I'll say this, they modified their kind of human wave assaults, where what they would do is they would send very small teams along sort of pre-decided channels. And in so doing, it's almost like mycelia coming out from a fungus. And they find the path of least resistance, and they go, okay, this team died here, this team died here, this team actually reached the point we told them to and radioed back, so they know that path is safe to send troops through. And in that way, it's not exactly, I wouldn't call it maneuver warfare, but it is, they are using those smaller teams, and they're modifying their kind of mass attritional fighting. And we've struggled on the Ukrainian side with building defenses, because there's not a lot of education on how to build like modern fortifications. And so it was really only, just as an example, it was really only up until this year I had never seen anyone putting in concertina wire, which is a really important barrier to use against infantry, because it's very hard for them to push through it. And that's one of those things that, I mean, we just take it as for granted with our military training, but it's one of those things that's been such a widespread deficit in Ukrainian training, that it's only now has the knowledge of this promulgated enough that we actually see it being used. And then sometimes it's not being applied correctly. And the overall effect is that we have some poorly prepared defenses that the Russians are able to exploit in their traditional ways. And it just accentuates the need to get more and better training inside Ukraine, so that when soldiers are building these defenses, they actually understand the principles at work, and they're not just putting, okay, I was told to put wire here, so I'm putting wire here. But they're thinking about how to use the terrain, how to actually reinforce the wire properly. I mean, just on that small example. So yeah, I mention it all the time, but training is by far the best return on investment that any military can get, because soldiers who are properly trained and educated, they can do phenomenal things with almost no resources. And both Audie and I know that because we both come from incredibly under-resourced institutions in the U.S. Marine Corps and the Canadian Army.
Good.
Kathy Daniel has a
Other
question
questions,
here.
Brian, you want to see if the other folks want to chat? Ask them.
Yeah, Kathy, do you want me to read your question for you? You want to do it yourself?
Um, I can do it.
Great.
When the war started, well, this current Russian invasion, my son was incredibly upset, and he spent weekends in the library, the main library in New York City, and contacting people that he knew. He's a computer programmer at Google, and he developed a drone system. Maybe David could, and I guess I can't, I'm not supposed to explain it, but it's different than the one that was used that went in deep into Russia. It's more, I would have called it a defensive, but it is offensive, but it's movable. Anyway, when I saw the pictures of the system that was used and talked to my son, he said it is so similar to what I developed, but his is different and could provide some other strategic advantages. He doesn't have any military connections, so it's in the patent system now. It's grinding along. I think it's got a provisional patent, but I haven't talked to him about this because I didn't even think about it until today, that possibly, and I know in the US now, they're not going to be developing it because Trump has pulled back all of our support for Ukraine. And so I just, he wants to help. He has this incredible system developed. Where to go? Any suggestions?
Audie, you want? We
Yeah.
should have had Dimitro here today.
Oh yeah. I was just talking to him. Yeah, it's an interesting problem set, Kathy. So acquisitions like in defense procurement, especially on the technology side in Ukraine, is kind of chaotic. I mean, it's very slow and chaotic in the US as well. Um, but now try doing that when the entire country is at war. So, like,
Yeah.
I'll say, for example, like if your son had a drone that he made that he thinks would be effective, um, it wouldn't really be like let's go through the US government and then that gets approved and they send it to you. Like that process would take like years, right?
Yeah.
And it's not going through the Ukrainian acquisitions process because they're not going to want to acquire anything or give money to anything unless it's already been proven in combat. So what a lot of companies will do, probably not as many as should do it, because there's a lot of them that think I have this great idea, someone give me money for it right off the bat. Um, but the companies that know what they need to do is they will give that equipment basically as a donation to Ukrainian, either a unit or some type of NGO that's like half military, half civilian, because the lines are all completely blurred, right? Like civil society and national defense are like totally integrated. Um, and like some unit will go out, like some drone unit or something, and they'll test the product and they'll say, "Oh, actually, um, this is really quite good," or they'll get feedback or something, and that without getting overly into the weeds, then they can start a request process themselves for this specific piece of equipment. Um, but it's extremely complicated. And I will say, as far as like patent protection, uh, IP is up for grabs in Ukraine. I'll say that. I mean, I'm not trying to take a judgmental position against anything, but like if the Ukrainians see an American piece of equipment and they think they can make it in Ukraine for cheaper, they can acquire it in the US, they're going to do that because they're trying to win a war. But I will say on the American side, we do need people building drones for the US that are being built for the fight in Ukraine. if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Because our like legacy defense industrial complex stuff, um, they take years to absorb this information, and it might not even be like they might not even be incentivized from a profit perspective to build things for the current war when the government contracts exist for the previous war. So I'm grateful that your son is at least like thinking about this because these are the things that, we need to think about. And if he wants to donate some stuff to Ukraine, you can just shoot me a message or get my email from Brian or David, and I can help make that happen.
Oh, that would be fantastic. The system is more, it's to defend small countries like Ukraine. And then he said it's also applicable to other European countries. So I think he would be happy to donate it. I'll have to
Yeah.
talk to him about that.
I just also realized Kevin just sent something, but it's a great point. Um, it's very easy for people to come to Ukraine and like participate in these events and conferences and like things like that. Um, and kind of get exposed to like the Ukrainian tech, like defense technology industry, Ukrainian government, Ukrainian military, and other non-Ukrainians who are trying to get involved. So like if he ever wants to like come out to Kiev and meet some people and like either bring a prototype of his product or just kind of like bring some ideas, it's very, I mean, I don't want to say it's low effort because it's a huge pain to get to Kiev, but it's very doable. It's not like prohibited.
Okay, would it be a certain conference that he should come to?
Kevin just sent in the chat called Invest in Bravery. It's a yeah, like a quarterly event that Kevin and I both go to. But they have other ones as well. And like if you just Google like, I don't know, Defense Technology Conference Ukraine, there's going to be a million of these, but the Invest in Bravery ones are pretty good because it's like pretty much everything is in English and it's very tailored towards like international presence.
Great.
We
Okay,
have we have
thank
5 to 10 minutes left, and I can connect on Audie and Kathy offline here to kind of go further on this. But do we have one or two more questions from folks who joined us today?
This is Peter. One of the things that I think all of us were unbelievably impressed and really some of us anyway were surprised was the organization and technology behind the attacks within Russia. And I guess my question to you all is this a one-off or are we into something that's a good deal different? Are we seeing the Minutemen, as we used to refer, our revolutionaries in 1775 with high tech, getting the ability and the help that they need to do more of these kinds of, I guess I would call them guerrilla operations.
Yeah.
So,
I yeah, I mean, I think basically, what we saw with that like strategic aviation targeting is like one of the most impressive like special operations slash intelligence operations since like World War II. Except, in World War II, you had the OSS and the Special Operations Executive and these big international efforts with lots of international funding backing them. Whereas the Ukrainians, SBU, pretty much appears to have pulled this off on their own. I mean, we don't know for sure, but they definitely didn't notify the U.S. And it wasn't like it wasn't like, hey, we're giving these guys Javelin missiles, go like shoot some tanks. This was like they built their own stuff, they developed their own concept of operations. They spent 18 months doing this incredibly complex thing that people really only thought like the CIA and Mossad were capable of. And we're basically like seeing like, oh man, like the Ukrainian intelligence. I mean, Kevin and I already know this, right? But it is comes sometimes a bit of a shocker to people outside of what we do. These guys are extremely capable. They're not, like I said before, they're not like helpless waiting for American intervention. They are extremely adaptive and capable.
Well, they kicked the Russians out of the Black Sea.
Exactly.
That's tells you something. early on in this war, a year and a half ago, 2 years.
Kevin, I was letting you chime in. I know you've
Oh,
got.
yeah, sorry. Pardon me. Uh, I mean, I don't have too much else to add to what Audie said, other than that, and I have absolutely no vision on this. I have no connections in Ukraine Special Services, but I know that Ukrainians Ukrainians never pass up an opportunity. And another analyst recently commented on this. He said that the Ukrainian special services now know that they have a team of agents within Russia that they can count on, and they have people who can get in and operate there. So there will be. This is the kind of we're seeing like state asymmetric warfare, which is it's had its other instantiations in history, but now we're seeing it in the 21st century. So I believe that we will see other attacks exploiting Russia's large size, exploiting their arrogance, and exploiting the porosity of their border. So I've been smiling through this whole thing while we're talking about it, because I just can't wait to see what else Ukraine has in store.
There's been a few days in this war where you get up out of bed and you see what's happened, or it's late at night, and it's the Kursk invasion, the drone attacks, the counterattack early in the war, right? And it gives you great hope, and then you're like, how can can this keep happening? And maybe that's my quick whip around here for both you guys. Give us if things go well, best case scenario, what are 2 or 3 things we want to wake up and see in the next 6 to 12 months happening on the ground there? We'll end on optimism here. We'll hope for the best.
Let me jump in first on that one. The big thing that we want to see is we want to see some kind of big maneuver on the Ukrainian side that's able to uh, basically separate the Russian forces north of Crimea from the ones in the country's east. How that's going to look, I don't know. That's going to be difficult, but that will be one of the things that lets Ukrainian forces really start to chip away at the Russia's hold on the territory that they have. Um, but I hesitate to make any predictions. It's just something that's what if I woke up and I saw a massive incursion down into the southeast of Ukraine, I'd be very, very happy, because that would be the real beginning of the end as far as Russia's invasion. So it's kind of a maximalist hope, but
I
it's mine.
like it. I like it. Audie?
Yeah, I totally agree there. I would like to see more of what we saw with this attack on the strategic aviation. So, one of those air bases was like 4,000 kilometers inside Russia, like just north of Mongolia. Um, you know, I know Kevin loves history, and I do too. But you know, one of the major reasons the Russians ended the war in Afghanistan was because the mothers of the dead Russian soldiers like were getting so outraged. And the current administration, well, the current Putin, the decades long administrator, has done a good job of making the Russians not feel the war at home. I'm not a Putin expert or Russian domestic policy expert, but we need to uh, we need to make them feel it at home. And whether that's, I'm not advocating for, blowing up civilian targets like the Russians do in Ukraine, but by showing that their soft underbelly, where they've got their industry and they've got their, strategic aviation and their military schools and their logistics hubs. Um, yeah, I mean, SBU has just showed, and it's not just them, it's, kind of Ukrainian intelligence and special operations in general. They've showed that those are all achievable targets. And, you know, like David said earlier, I mean, that strategic aviation operation took out like 30-something% of their strategic bombers, and that is not easily replaceable. That's
Mhm.
billions of dollars of damage, and that's serious damage to them as a nuclear power. So yeah, I think in addition to maneuver and winning on the immediate battlefield on the front line, I think we're going to see, and I hope we do, more stuff in the deep. Um, yeah.
And I think
That's great.
also that the casualty rate the Russians have had is it will have to come into play here sooner than later, I think, because they've taken reaching 1 million maybe by the summer, and 200 to 250,000 of them have been killed. That's a huge, huge hit, and like they've not seen since the Second World War. So I think that'll be another piece that will start to be felt. Thank you both.
Yeah, this is super helpful. I like to end on that optimism too. I know David and I are hoping too that General Kellogg, he seems to be the stronger voice for staying with Ukraine inside the administration, gets a little more political power inside the administration coming forward. Let's end also too on 60-second pitches for Saber Tag, because I know gifts to Saber Tag go a long way. David, also for your PTSD work, you've raised a good chunk of money and need a little more, you and Eric. And Audie, if you have a pitch, I don't know if it's the Saber Tag pitch because you work with that, you can throw your pitch in too, but let's start with Saber Tag, Kevin.
All right, thank you. No, so it's Saber Training Advisory Group. We do exactly what it says on the tin. We advise on training with Ukrainian forces. Our next upcoming big project is to work with a battalion of the Rubij Brigade. Some people may know those as the 4th Rapid Reaction Brigade. They were some of the principal defenders at Hostomel Airport, northwest of Kyiv. But yeah, we're 100% donor funded, and we actually have a 501c3 fiscal sponsor. So if anyone would like to make tax deductible donations to us, they can. We can facilitate that. And yeah, our programming is pretty much all we do. We house, feed, and fuel our instructors. So all of our funding goes directly into the work that we're doing, and there's no overhead. I run the whole thing with a couple of help of a couple of volunteers, and then obviously myself in Ukraine. And I can it's available. All the information is available on our website, www.sabre, S-A-B-R-E, we use the British spelling, TAG.org. And in the past, we've been able to, with adequate time, we have been able to achieve 60% casualty reductions just via training with our partners. So it's incredibly impactful. I advocate for training as the kind of spend that has the largest ROI. So anyone who can support us, it's really appreciated.
And
Just to toss in real quick, yeah, they're incredibly lean because they get volunteers, ex-military, and really just have to feed them. And so Kevin makes a little bit of money go a long way. David,
I
sorry
want
to
to
cut you
support
off.
Kevin's program. It's been wonderful, and the results, as you just said in the last statistic, is pretty impressive. On the other side of this, it's really not the other side because it's all the same battle in Ukraine. But I've been working with some NGO, non-governmental organizations in Ukraine that work with kids, children, combatants, and veterans, and who have post-traumatic stress disorder. And we know we can make a difference in how that person is going to function in society with the proper treatment. So we got a fundraising drive going on that Judy and I kicked off. We would just see if there was any interest. And I put a really modest amount of money that we thought we could raise, maybe 30,000. Well, we exceeded that quite quickly. And we went up to 60, and now we're trying to get to 100,000. We're at about 90. So anyway, this money goes to basically psychologists who will have one-on-one groups therapy with those three folks, and children, combatants, and veterans. And we're also bringing some veterans U.S. veterans to Ukraine to meet with Ukrainian veterans to develop more of a bond and more of a relationship. Actually, one of the Vietnam Veterans of America, which I belong to, one of our chapters is already contributed to this $2,500. Another one is about to do the same thing. So anyway, the upshot is that we're bringing people together who have gone through this experience to help those who are doing it now. So,
Two great causes here. Any other things we want to add here before we wrap up? You can get a hold of, if you need help getting more information or want to connect to Kevin or Audie, or
yeah, we can
let us know.
We can get you the right connections if you do want.
And David, what is the URL, or how do people donate to your cause, yours and Judy's cause?
Our cause goes to the Ukraine charitable platform, and the address to that is 2247 West Chicago Avenue, Chicago, Illinois, 60622.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. And if someone's going to donate, if they can just put on the check and the memo, appeal for PTSD, it'll get to the right people, because it's got to be sent to Lviv, and they get for different functions. They need to know how to separate the checks.
Yeah.
So,
Great, thank you.
thank you.
And the link for Saber Tag, it's just Saber Tag org is in the chat here. And I'm going to send this video out to our list of 500 folks who get this email this Sunday morning. So you can also, if you miss anything, I'll make sure that both areas. David, I didn't know it was in Chicago. It's close. It's a stone's throw from me there.
Yeah, I was surprised I could remember the address.
That was well done.
Impressive.
Well, thank you, Audie. Thank you, Kevin, for joining us. It was really enlightening, and thank you all everybody who joined too to be the audience today. Really appreciate it, and hope to see you for the next live segment. We don't know when it's going to be, but take care and be safe, Audie and Kevin.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Oh,
The
well,
next
see you
live
guys.